Hey, welcome in.
Welcome to the Arrowhead Addict podcast.
We are here coming to you live.
The Kansas City Chiefs are going to the Super Bowl. You only win a Super Bowl 2 times every 5 years, right?
Oh!
The warm-up act is over. Let's bring in Melissa Etheridge, massive Chiefs fan. Melissa,
Super Bowl champion, 2-time Pro Bowler, and Trent Green. Trent Green, how you doing?
Hey, what's going on, guys?
and he picked it up! He picked it up! He's gonna score! And we'll see you next week, but until then, as always, go Chiefs.
Welcome. This is Wacky Wednesday here on the Arrowhead Addict channel. And yes, you are seeing that right. Patrick Allen is joining me for the first time ever on Wacky Wednesday. I'm Adam Best, and producer Richard is here to prevent this from being a 3-hour epic. He's gonna try to keep us on track here, since we're old buddies who tend to go a little long. But how you doing, Patty?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm coming down with a little bit of a cold, but that's like, I got a kid, a baby, especially. So if other parents tell me that I would just have a cold for the next 4 or 5 years, so I'm just getting used to it. I'm excited to be here, man. I'm a little bit bummed because I was thinking about why have I never been invited on the Wacky Wednesday? But per my request, I wore my way into it, so I'm excited to be on the show. I'm a big fan. I often am in the comments of the show when you guys are doing your thing.
I know, we see you and we love that. And it's not that you're not invited. It's just Sterling and I do, we do about 50 shows a year. We hardly ever take off. We're in a good rhythm, but this is, it's great to have you here today. It's actually my birthday. So this is kind of my birthday, Arrowhead Addict birthday present, that I get the two OGs together on Wacky Wednesday for the first time.
Happy birthday, brother. I didn't know. I need to get on the Facebook more so I get these notifications.
Yeah, the book of face. I'm never there either. So
I talked to your brother today. He could have reminded me.
I'd rather he not. I'm so old that it's kind of like let's just pretend this day isn't happening. We've got a great show for you guys today. We're gonna kind of do a pre-playoff stock report. We're going to talk about the panic in the kingdom. Real quick before we get into our segments, we're going to talk about Patrick Mahomes and the ankle. He did practice, I believe, was a full participant today. So that is good news. But before we get to all that, there's a little bit of business we have to take care of.
That's right, because Underdog is the place to play if you're a sports fan looking to win money while watching sports. With over 5 million happy players and 2 billion won, Underdog makes it fun and easy to cash in on all your favorite athletes' performances. Compete against other players just by selecting higher or lower on 2 or more player stats, and you could win up to 1,000 times your money. So turn every touchdown into a win with Underdog. You guys have heard us been talking about Underdog all year. I've been a big fan lately of the vulture protection. If you select a designated running back to score a touchdown in your pick'em entry and they get vultured, we will rescue your entry. It's amazing. So just download our app today. Use the code Arrowhead Addict. That's all. Download their app, not our app. We don't have an app, but download their app today. Use the code Arrowhead Addict. That's all one word. You get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Again, that's code Arrowhead Addict, all one word, to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Must be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama, Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. Arizona, 1-800-NEXT-STEP, 1-800-639-8783, or text NEXT STEP to 53342. And New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE New York, or text HOPE New York to 467-369.
That's pretty fast for having a cold, man.
I'm going to run Sterling down. I told you I was practicing earlier. Now he did it. I think the record is 16 seconds. Producer Richard might be able to confirm. I don't know if he's keeping track of this. I got to 18. And so I need a couple more practice rounds, but I'm going to try to run them down.
And we're talking just the end of that.
Yeah, just the disclosures at the end.
Well, I love Underdog. Actually, it's the time of year where I need to go check all my best ball teams because I drafted them in the spring and summer and just kind of forgot about them because, you just kind of throw $5 out and do the puppy or whatever. And you don't have to do anything in best ball. So I need to check those out. We have a super chat here from Dave McGahee, and he donates $10. Very generous. Thank you. He says, happy birthday. I'm Adam. I'm old too.
Yeah.
Well, it's good to have friends in the older Chiefs fan club.
Yeah, I feel seen.
So Patrick Mahomes, man, what a durable player. I kind of thought it might go like this because what we've seen in the past. So 2022, he hurts his ankle, basically a high ankle sprain against the Jacksonville Jaguars in the playoffs, doesn't miss a game. And this happened in the 2019-2020 season too, the season they won their first Super Bowl. He hurt his ankle. Was it against the Jaguars again? I don't know. It was one of those first couple games, and then he got stepped on in the Colts game, and it was kind of a lingering thing. But he tends to play through these things. I think he even kind of tweaked it earlier this year, and I think his ability to play through these things, it's a testament to three different things here. First of all, he's tough. Second of all, the training staff really does good work with him, and then third, the training he does with Bobby, the proprioception and all the weird stuff to make his body adaptable and bendy and resilient really is paying off with how quick he recovers. And I'm also guessing Patrick Mahomes, the money he has, how important he is, his brand, all that. He probably has invested quite a bit in recovery, like LeBron and some of those other guys. So that might be the fourth thing. Do you think we'll see him Saturday afternoon?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, look, his ankle is only going to get better with the passing days, presumably, right? So if he didn't start the week off even limited and he's been a full participant in practice, that tells us all we need to know. It tells us that, one, he's feeling comfortable enough to be out there, that there's not bad swelling, that he doesn't need a ton of rest, because it could easily, he knows the offense, right? Like he could sit out the whole week if he wanted to and still go out there and perform. But he's out there practicing. And it tells us, I think, that the Chiefs don't think he has a risk for injuring himself more, right? Injuring the ankle more. That's a big, big thing heading into this game against a team with a good pass rush. And the big thing with him, I think, is being able to protect himself, right? More so even than the ankle and pain management and stuff is, can he protect himself? Because God knows he needs to, with the way that the line has been blocking this season. So if he can't run around, he's going to be a sitting duck back there. I think it's going to be interesting, though, because it's going to force him, if he does have some mobility issues, to get rid of the football. If he's not able to move around and navigate the pocket in the way that he has before, and we've seen him have success in that type of situation and them alter the plays a little bit. So if the Chiefs have been holding some things back, right? Like I was talking about this with one of my colleagues here at Fansided earlier about how we know that like the Chiefs, like they've had struggles all year, and other teams like the Bills, their defensive struggles are kind of like a new thing that's just starting to pop up late in the season. Maybe some things are getting exposed. And I was saying, I would much rather have the Chiefs struggle all year, know what their warts are, know what their problems are, and be working behind the scenes to fix those so that when they get to the playoffs, they have answers, rather than, the only Super Bowl we lost, the offensive line injuries happened in the playoffs. There was no time to adjust to anything. Mm-hmm. And so if they have a bunch of plays that they've been working on, no huddle stuff, quick hitting plays and things like that, that they're not calling a lot of because they're saving them, and he's got some mobility issues, we may see a little preview of what we might see, the offense we might see in the playoffs at a few, maybe not the whole Texans game, but at times during this Texans game, because I think they know how important this game is for them to win.
It is very important. I'm a bit surprised, though. I figured with this stretch of 10 days where they're basically playing 3 games, and especially the close proximity between the game Saturday and the game on Christmas, I thought they might sit him because they have a couple game cushion on the Bills. So I don't know. I thought, and if you win this one against the Texans without him, you're in really good shape. This is why you go out and pay Carson Wentz, but he's not like most people with these ankle injuries. It sounds like it's a mild. I think Jalen even pointed that out in the chat. Mild high ankle sprain, which sounds like an oxymoron, but
right,
man, it just seems like he can play through these things. And you're right, he's going to have to be a little bit more of a Kurt Warner if his mobility is limited. But we saw some of that in the playoffs and that year in 2022. And we even saw against the Eagles, we thought his mobility was limited. We thought he got hurt in that game. And when he really needed it, he gutted it out and had one of the biggest scrambles in NFL history, really. I don't want him doing that Saturday. I think he should just kind of put the scrambling on ice until the postseason for the most part. I mean, if he needs to limp off and pick up a 5-yard first down with no danger, that's fine. But we can't afford to get him any more banged up, right?
Yeah, and look, I think the Chiefs are looking at this as they really need this 1 seed. They're banged up. They need extra practice time, right? It'd be great if they can use that extra time to heal and do extra practice, because they're going to be trying to still integrate Hollywood Brown back into the offense. What's their plan for left tackle? Is DJ Humphries going to be able to come back? And do they want him at left tackle? If they do, extra practice time for him. So there's a lot of benefits to them nailing this number 1 seed. And remember, they're going to get more information. If they win, like if the Bills lose one more game and the Chiefs beat the Texans, it's over, right? So now you can figure out your rest management for the rest of the season. Whereas if you put it off, you still need to win this game. So you sit Mahomes, but maybe you don't sit anybody else. If you can get this win, look, the Bills play, I think, the Patriots twice and the Jets. They're probably not going to lose again. But it's the NFL, man. It is the NFL. Anything
divisional games, right?
Divisional games are tough. It's tricky. An injury could happen for all we know. Like, there's all kinds of factors at play. So if he's good enough to go, he needs to be out there. And I don't think it was as severe as it looked. It may have been painful in the moment. But let's get the dub and see what happens.
Well, you have to think about it this way. If they beat the Texans and they beat the Steelers, they essentially got a 2-week bye. Nobody of any significance has to suit up against Denver. I know you want to win X amount of games or whatever, and it's a division rival, but that game becomes essentially meaningless for the Chiefs. It might have meaning for Denver, but
could have meaning for Cincinnati too.
Right.
If Cincinnati needs their road to the playoffs, which is a long shot, they need the Colts need to lose a game, the Dolphins need to lose one more game, and they need either the Chargers or the Broncos to lose out. Okay, and so the Broncos, let me just pull up their schedule really quickly. So the Broncos, here's their remaining schedule. They play the Chargers this week. So if they lose to the Chargers, they play the Bengals in week 17, and then they play the Chiefs. So you can actually see, like, Cincinnati could win out. They're talented enough to do it. You could definitely see, I think the Dolphins play the 49ers this week. They could lose that game. The Colts easily could lose another game. And so if the Chargers win this weekend and then Cincinnati beats Denver, week 17, Chiefs have it all locked up. The Bengals need the Chiefs to beat Denver to get into the playoffs. And the Chiefs are like, maybe we start Mike Caliendo at quarterback in this game. If I'm the Chiefs, I am throwing that game. I don't want to see Joe Burrow and Lou Anarumo in the playoffs as a 7 seed when I'm the 1. No, thank you. I don't care if they've been crap all year. Don't want any part of it. So something to think about as this all unfolds. If the Chargers win, that scenario very well could play out. The Bengals aren't dead yet.
But good news on Patrick Mahomes. So it could be a lot worse. Let's get into our first segment. It is taking crazy pills.
Doesn't anyone notice this? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills.
Can't beat that clip, man.
I love that movie, man.
You have to.
So good.
You absolutely have to. I don't know if it's boredom, short-term memory, or being overly emotional, but it seems like Chiefs Kingdom is really hitting the panic button right now. And to me, that's absurd. So the Chiefs aren't 13-1 by accident. Part of how they got here, has there been some luck involved? Absolutely. But part of how they got here is they know how to finish better than anyone in the league, perhaps better than anybody in league history. That's the kind of team they are in crunch time. That's the kind of play callers they have on both sides of the ball, and that's the kind of quarterback they have. So additionally, I know we've been over this point too. Style points for winning big, they don't affect anything. They don't matter. Nobody cares. In 2 months, nobody's going to care if the Bills scored 50 points in a game, or the Lions scored 50 points in a game, or the Ravens scored 50 points. Nobody cares. No, it doesn't matter. Nobody cares. It may matter to an ascending team's confidence, but the Chiefs do not need that confidence boost, I assure you guys. So they do not need to run up numbers. And then lastly, we've seen these very Chiefs drag themselves through the 2022 and 2023 seasons, drag themselves through the muck. Everyone's more motivated to see them than they are to see the opposition every single week. They gut it out, and then they flip a switch in the playoffs. We've seen it 2 years in a row. Why are we betting against this happening now? I mean, it's like we all have collective amnesia. So Andy Reid and Steve Spagnuolo will be even better game planners in the postseason. We know that to be true. They have more postseason experience than anybody out there. It's not particularly close now that Bill Belichick is gone. And if you give them 1 week, but particularly 2 weeks to game plan for somebody, they're in real trouble. Travis Kelce and Chris Jones, I expect them, especially Chris Jones, to turn up a notch once again. And then last year with Travis Kelce, we kind of were like, is he washed? Is he slowing down? And the guy went berserk in the playoffs. So don't count out 87. And then lastly, we talked about this, health permitting, Mahomes will scramble more in the playoffs. He'll have less turnover worthy plays and more big time throws. That's something that's been documented when you compare his regular season performances with the postseason performances. I think all these are well-documented trends. And until I see otherwise, personally, I expect them to repeat. Patrick, what say you about the panic?
Do you know what today is? It is December 18th, 2024. It is the 2-year anniversary of the game the Kansas City Chiefs played on December 18th, 2022 against, guess what? The Houston Texans. Only it was a different Houston Texans team. They were 1-12. The Chiefs won that game 30-24 in overtime. They went on to, of course, win the Super Bowl over the Philadelphia Eagles and started their back-to-back and started this three-peat. People, believe me, were not happy that the Chiefs went to overtime and almost lost to, let me see, who was quarterback in the Texans on that day? Oh, it was Davis Mills. Jeff Driscoll also threw some passes, as did Philip Dorsett II. Royce Freeman was the running back. The leading receiver was Chris Moore with 4 receptions for 42 yards. Chiefs almost lost that game. I understand the concern from one aspect, which is that last year, as bad as the offense was, the defense was so good all season long. And when they got to the playoffs, I think the game against the Ravens is a great example, right? They had their scripted plays. Now, the Ravens defense was unbelievable last year. A lot of people said it was better than the Chiefs. The Chiefs came out with their plan. They scored enough points, and the defense managed to hold on for the rest of the game. So I can see where people are a little bit nervous because they're like, our offense is maybe a little bit better than it was last year in some areas. Like the receivers that we have can catch the ball, but we don't have that same defense. And that's true. But the history tells us that this team is going to bring out some stuff for the playoffs that we haven't seen before. That doesn't mean that they're incapable of losing. But Travis Kelce, right? Well, Travis Kelce, he's not the same this year. Look at the second half of last season. It looks a lot like Travis Kelce's season this year. They're going to have stuff for him. He's going to turn it up a little bit. This is like LeBron maintenance mode, late in his career with Kelce. So Like, is there a reason to be concerned? Sure. Is there a reason to panic? I mean, the team has lost one game. And I think that one thing that Chiefs fans could take away from all of this is that as bad as like they're playing down to their competition, they're not blowing anybody out. But when they've played good teams, the Chargers are a good team. They don't have a lot of weapons on offense, but they're a good team. They're going to make the playoffs. Chiefs beat them twice. The Chiefs, even the Buffalo game, even the game that they lost, Patrick Mahomes had the ball and they were down 2 points when they gave it back to him. Now, look, the Chiefs defense couldn't get a stop, except they did get them to a 4th down. But the Bills knew if Patrick Mahomes got that ball back, it was curtains. So they've gone up against the best of the best. The Ravens, the Bills, everybody. They've been right there with everybody. So I don't think that there's going to be a scenario where they get into the playoffs and they get blown out. They could lose. They could have a very similar situation to what happened in the first loss to Buffalo. They don't have the ball last, and they can't stop Josh Allen. And if that happens, credit to the Bills. It's certainly the Chiefs have gotten the Bills that way. But it really frustrates me when people are like, we're in a lose-lose situation here as Chiefs fans, because if the Chiefs don't win the Super Bowl, everyone's going to say they were frauds this year. And that is categorically not true, right? If you root for an NFL team to lose for long enough, you're going to be right. So if they lose, everyone's going to say, see, I told you so. They were never that good. But that doesn't mean that they weren't that good. It just means they lost in the NFL playoffs, which happens to even the best teams.
I think there's a direct correlation in the defense falling off and Jalen Watson's injury. So you have that. Some other guys have been banged up, and most notably, they've been working in Charles Omenihu later than they worked him in last season when he was fully healthy. So I think, especially with that secondary, Spags is still trying to find the mix. I mean, you even see that they've injected Steven Nelson into that room to see if he can help out. And really, kind of like the receiving core last year, he doesn't have to figure that out totally until the playoffs. He can still experiment. He can still try things out. It's kind of a laboratory for Steve Spagnuolo. Every single year I've seen his defense amp it up and throw their best fastball in the playoffs. I just don't expect it to be any differently this time, especially late in games. So I think we can just all calm down a little bit, right?
Yeah, and Spags will force. The thing about Spagnuolo is that even when he doesn't have the best talent, what did he do to the Ravens scored last year late in the season? They put like 50 points on somebody. Their offense looked as unstoppable as the Bills' offense looks right now. And yes, the Chiefs' defense was more formidable. But what did Spagnuolo do in that game? It wasn't just that the Chiefs dominated. He lured them into playing the game the Chiefs wanted them to play. He lured them into passing the ball and not running the ball. And that's what he has a tendency to do in these big games with his game plan. He's like, okay, we know what you want to do, but we're going to show you stuff that makes doing what you want to do like it. This over here is irresistible, right? It's like, yeah, I want to lose weight, but Steve Spagnuolo is going to put a big slice of chocolate cake down in front of me, and I'm not going to be able to help myself but take a bite. And then before I realize what's going on, it's the fourth quarter and it's a 1-score game and I'm in trouble.
Exactly. And if we're most worried about Buffalo, I'm most worried about Buffalo. I don't know about you. I didn't expect to be here at this point of the season looking at their roster during the preseason. But given that they have, I think it's indisputable that they have the second best quarterback in the league. I'm not surprised. And that is the guy that scares me, because on his best day, he can match Patrick Mahomes' best day. Now, he's not as clutch. He's not as consistent over the course of their careers. I don't think he has some of the intangibles that Mahomes has. But in terms of his physical gifts, I'm not sure that he's not the most gifted quarterback we've ever seen. But I think the Chiefs have a couple aces up their sleeve when it comes to Buffalo. And I think there's a reason why Buffalo beats them in the regular season and the Chiefs beat them in the postseason. First of all, Josh Allen is just going to play with reckless abandon, whether it's June or January. He doesn't care. He's the same guy every single game. But Patrick Mahomes, he amps it up. He runs a lot more in the playoffs. I think one of these recent Buffalo games, we saw him run for almost 100 yards in like the first quarter. He's just a different guy. And then the game planning. Sean McDermott, I think both his game planning and his late game management aren't quite as scrutinized in the regular season. But when the Chiefs have already played the Bills once and they get to kind of experiment and probe and prod and find out what makes the Bills tick, you best believe that they're going to come around the second time better prepared and getting ready to throw some stuff at the Bills that they're not ready for. And I don't think Sean McDermott can do that as well to the Chiefs. And in fact, we've seen him in the playoffs not even be able to do that against recently the Bengals. The Bengals went up to Orchard Park and beat them in that snow game. And it just seemed like Zach Taylor and Lou Anarumo had a better game plan than the Bills did. So I think there are other strategical reasons to be optimistic about that matchup in particular.
Yeah, you just have to throw it all out, man. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how many games you won in the regular season. Look what happened to the Chiefs in the Super Bowl against the Bucs where they couldn't block. I mean, they got boat raced. Throw it out. It doesn't matter. It's one game, and they're going to throw everything at it. And I always go back to the AFC Championship game the Chiefs beat the Bengals in, where Steve Spagnuolo just shut down the Bengals offense for an entire quarter. And then they figured it out, and that was all that they needed. But they shut them down. They had some blitzes that they had never seen before. And until the Bills prove to me that they're not blowing their wad in the regular season, I just feel like the Bills, the Lions, these are good teams. I don't think they're holding anything back, man. They're throwing everything they have. Like that game against the Lions, I think they emptied out the playbook. I mean, what do they have that people have not seen after that? So we'll see. We'll see if the Chiefs have some things in reserve, and if it's enough to make up for their deficiencies. The most thing I'm most concerned about is the tackles, because that's the one thing that can stop Patrick Mahomes. And if they haven't figured out how to block long enough, and he hasn't figured out to get the ball out faster, if those two things, don't come to fruition, then they will have an early exit.
The bad news is that has sunk a season before, Super Bowl 55, which you mentioned. The good news is that nobody is more aware of that fact than the Chiefs, than Andy Reid, Andy Heck, Brett Veach. And they've been thinking all season long about how to fix this. They brought in DJ Humphries. Right now they have Joe Tooney, who's an all-pro left guard, playing left tackle, even though that's not where he's best suited to play. They feel like it's their best solution. So, and then you have to remember the last two seasons, we didn't feel good about the tackles going into the postseason. We didn't feel good about Wiley and Orlando Brown Jr. They gave up a shit ton of pressures that year. They did not look good during the regular season. And then they got in the postseason, and the Chiefs coaching staff and the line kind of gelled. It's similar to what happened last year when Donovan Smith and Juwan Taylor, we weren't feeling very good about them either, and they held up in the playoffs. I really trust the offensive line coach, Andy Heck, to get these guys going when they need to get going.
They have the coaching advantage for sure. And I just hope that they know what they're doing, because I booked my room in New Orleans. So booked it.
That's
today.
what you've been doing before. That's tradition though, right?
Yeah. You gotta have that room booked up. So no, we'll be there. We'll be there whether the Chiefs are or not, but it sure will be lonely without our friends who are always there when we're there.
Fingers crossed. Well, let's get into our next segment. It's a little game we call the Casey stock market.
Greed, for lack of a better word, is good.
Fugazi, fugazi, it's a wazi, it's a woozy, it's a fairy dust.
Tell me the difference between stupid and illegal, and I'll have my wife's brother arrested.
Since this is Patty's first time playing, I wanted to mix it up. We're going to list off players and have three options on how to handle their stock. And this is heading into the postseason. So pump, which is buy, dump, which is sell, or hold, basically meaning that's a static asset. So I'm going to list some names off, and then I'm going to throw some tidbits at you. And together we're going to figure out whether we want to pump, dump, or hold. Sound good?
All right, let's do it. Yeah.
Feel like you're on Jeopardy or something.
Let's do it, man. I love it.
First up is wide receiver Marquise Hollywood Brown. So fully practicing this week. I haven't heard about today, but I assume he was good to go. I think he's misunderstood as a player. So if you look at reception perception, they really chart him as an elite separator versus zone. And he beats zone at like 80% or higher every season except one. That's like top 12 zone beating numbers. And that kind of makes me think, oh, this is why the Chiefs were actually interested in him, not because he's going to run a bunch of 9 routes. So I think he's a better horizontal and intermediate separator than kind of a deep ball ace. So I wouldn't expect him to magically come in and start catching 60-yard bombs all the time, where Worthy is kind of not been on the same page as Mahomes. But I do think he is more technically refined, a more detailed route runner. He understands defenses better. I just think he's more ready for prime time because of his experience than Xavier Worthy. So all that being said, pump, dump, or hold on Hollywood.
Look, I want to pump because we need him. But I'm going to hold. We just don't know, right? Like there's no prospectus on him. There hasn't been a board meeting. Like we haven't, there's no shareholder reports. We've seen literally one play. We have no idea how the Chiefs plan to use this guy in their offense. And remember, they brought him in to be alongside Rashee Rice. So, do they want to use him as a deep threat? When he comes back, is he going to split snaps with Xavier Worthy? Is he going to be on the field at the same time as Xavier Worthy? Are they going to start using, which I assume they want to continue to use D-Hop in that Rashee Rice role, running slants, the shorter routes and things like that. But are they going to go to that more? And is that going to open things up for Hollywood? I think the play he got hurt on was kind of like a drag route. So we just don't know anything about what he's going to bring to this offense or what the plan is for him. So I'm going to hold, but I'm optimistic on the stock. I'm definitely going to buy some.
And I love the Wall Street lingo. I mean, you're really leaning in to the exercise here. And I think what worries me about him, and this is a nice transition to Xavier Worthy, is just the struggles against press man. They're both just so small and so slight that they just don't get off. If you have them out there in the boundary one-on-one against a press corner, they're going to have a hard time getting off that physical bump and run style. So that is, I think, the advantage in playing with DeAndre Hopkins over Rashee Rice is DeAndre Hopkins can do more of the X receiver stuff that might allow Hollywood to kick inside more than Rashee Rice was able to. I know Rashee Rice was adding some wrinkles to his game, and I think he will keep doing that. But DeAndre Hopkins, you can put him anywhere. He catches everything. He knows all the tricks. So I think that's going to be a good 1-2 punch. Next up is wide receiver Xavier Worthy. So he's accumulating stats. He's getting a lot of targets, but paltry 1.12 yards per route run on the year. For perspective, that's about where Richie James and Kadarius Toney were in 2023. So, and I think Patrick Mahomes would be the first to tell you that he needs to be part of the accountability loop here when it comes to their misconnections, especially on the long ball. But he's not popping in the same way, for example, Rashee Rice did last year. My dog really wants attention right now. I don't know what it is. I think it's raining. And I think it's fair to ask if he's better this season as a gadget player. So Xavier Worthy heading into the playoffs, pump, dump, or hold?
I think you got to hold. You're hoping for that Rashee Rice arc, but he's been getting a lot more snaps than Rashee was getting. And I just think he's the type of player that it's going to take a season. Like what Rashee Rice did last year was incredible. And I think it was partially because of how talented he is, but also partially because the role that he plays in this offense. What they're asking a guy like Xavier Worthy to do is a lot more difficult. Timing is so important with him, with Mahomes. You've got these issues with the tackle. He's a rookie. And what we've seen is sometimes he's just off his line where Mahomes thinks he's going to be. Mahomes wants him to flatten out, but he doesn't flatten out, or Mahomes wants him to continue on the sail and he flattens out, like whatever it is. They're just not simpatico yet. And until that happens, I think it's hard to pump him heading into the playoffs because you can't afford those missed opportunities in the playoffs. So I would lean into him in the gadget role for the playoffs because you will have Hollywood Brown on the field. And even though he's, how much chemistry does he have with Mahomes? He hasn't played, but at least he's a veteran guy and he's got many, many years in the league. And so he's going to see things that Xavier's not going to see. He's going to see them faster. And so I think that it could be really fascinating to watch them go out there with like 3 wide receiver sets with D-Hop and then put one of those two guys, Hollywood or Xavier Worthy, in motion. And does the addition of Hollywood Brown as another deep threat, does that get Xavier Worthy matched up on a lesser cornerback than he might see now? And, the Bills, when the Bills beat the Chiefs, the Bills played a lot of man coverage and they had a spy on the Chiefs because they weren't afraid of any of the Chiefs receivers beating them. The only one who really could, Kelce's not doing that much anymore. And the only one who could that has the speed is Xavier Worthy, and he's a rookie. So that worked out really well for them. If they try that again in the playoffs and Hollywood's out there, it could be disastrous for Buffalo.
Totally agree. There's a few things to remember with Xavier Worthy. I think the first is when you compare him to Rashee Rice. Well, Rashee Rice was 2 years older as a rookie. They're both born in April. Right now, Worthy's 21. Rashee was 23 last year. And those years in your 20, we're talking about a pretty good maturity gap. Even your physical development, there's just a little bit of a gap there. So it makes he had more experience in college as well. I'm holding, even though I'm barely holding on, because I thought we'd see a little bit more by now, a little bit more chemistry with his quarterback. And I'm holding because I think he can play that McCole Hardman role that we've seen in the playoffs in the past and be pretty valuable there. So that is what I'm hoping. As for Hollywood and the difference in chemistry, for some reason, rookies have a hard time with the system. And I think Andy Reid has a hard time trusting rookies as well. So it kind of goes both ways. But we've seen with DeAndre Hopkins, we've seen with Juju, we've even seen to some degree with MVS and Justin Watson, veterans pick this system up as receivers better than young players. So I think the integration for Hollywood Brown, who's played with Lamar Jackson, who's played with Kyler Murray, who's been a pretty good player with multiple quarterbacks, I think he can figure it out on short notice. So that's where I'm at with those two guys. Let's move on to the tight ends. First up is tight end Travis Kelce. So Travis hasn't cleared 70 yards. I think his high during the span is 68 since November 4th. And in that 6-game span, he has only 1 touchdown, which is interesting because in the last five games, Noah Gray has 5 touchdowns. So how are we feeling about Kelce? I know we talked a little bit about this earlier. Pump, dump, or hold?
Yeah, man, I have to pump Kelce. I know the numbers aren't there. I know he doesn't look quite the same, but I don't think that Noah Gray, and I love Noah Gray, but I don't think Noah Gray's doing what Noah Gray's doing without Travis Kelce on the field. Like, Travis Kelce is a big part of that. And I honestly think it's not that I don't think he's not trying out there, but I think it comes down to game plans and some of the things that they do. And he just doesn't seem on the same page with Patrick in some of these games. I think he could have had a couple more bigger games than he's actually had, but they just have been, and this is strange for them, not on the same page. There's something that happens when the stakes get raised a little bit, right? Like, so, you know me, I was an actor, and I'm not trying to compare this to athletics at all, but like, I was not a great rehearsal actor. I just it was hard for me to find my authenticity in the performance and stuff. It gets stale. And then when you get out there, you always hear the phrase, I do it on the night. when I would get out there in front of an audience, I just became a different actor. I had a really good sense for what was happening, how the audience was reading what I was doing. And I stopped overthinking things and just did. And that's what all the preparation is for, right? That's all the rehearsals. And I would, I did shows where I was like, I did a workshop in grad school on this play, and nobody liked it. Nobody liked the play in the class, grad school, all the writers, everybody was like, this isn't good. And I was like dreading the performance. We get out there and brought the house down. It was a piece that I have never had so many people come up and compliment the play I was completely shocked. And it was because sometimes you just don't know until the lights are the brightest and the stakes are raised. And I think that when Kelce gets out there and it's playoffs, baby, and this is they've played so much football, Adam, so much football. They've won a bunch of Super Bowls. For goodness sake, it's just hard. It's got to be hard to get on that kind of level of intensity for these regular season games against the Raiders. And especially when you're older. So I just think I don't think he's washed. I think he'll show up for the playoffs when it matters. And I think that rhythm that they've been missing will be there when they know it's do or die.
The stat is 6 more games than any other team during the Mahomes era. And I believe, I forget if it's the Rams or the 49ers, but there are teams they've played a full season more games than. In fact, that's most teams. The other thing is I just kept thinking about Allen Iverson. We're talking about practice when you were talking about that. And I think these games probably feel a little bit like practice to the Chiefs. They probably feel a little tedious, a little monotonous. And these other teams know that if they beat the Chiefs, all the eyes of the football world and the country are going to be on them. That's their chance to shine. It's a difficult situation having a target on your back for 6 or 7 years.
It happens all the time in basketball, especially, right? And you saw, I'm a Cavs fan. Do you remember those teams a few years back when LeBron was having those runs with the Cavs where they were going to the finals every year? It was the Atlanta Hawks won 60 games one year, and the Toronto Raptors had all these great teams, and they had better records than the Cavs in the regular season. And then they would get there, and it would be the Cavs were just shooting lights out from three, sweep them 4-0, or they'd lose one game and get the gentleman's sweep. And I'm not saying the Chiefs are going to go into the playoffs and just start boat racing teams, but what I'm saying is when teams have been to the mountaintop, they've been to the championship game over and over and over again, the regular season, it's just different, man. It's just they approach everything differently.
And I've made that comparison to the Greg Popovich and Tim Duncan Spurs, how they kind of coast and manage the regular season, and then we're a different animal in the playoffs. Of course, famously, I think that the term "flip the switch" started with the Kobe Shaq Lakers, because they would kind of coast and then they would turn it up in the playoffs. So I think Travis Kelce is the epitome of that kind of player who's going to shine the brightest when the lights are the brightest. Tight end Noah Gray. So I mentioned the hot streak he's been on. Are you pumping, dumping, or holding?
They
can't all be pumps. They can't all be pumps.
I know. I've only had one pump, and I'm going to hold. Look, Noah Gray is he's had a really nice run here, but I don't think that he's necessarily the next Travis Kelce. I think he has a very specific role, and we've seen runs like this from co-stars in the Chiefs offense before. Remember the touchdown streak that for goodness sake, Patrick's personal protector, running back. I've got a cold, dad brain. He's not on the team this year, was last year. They brought him back. McKinnon. Oh my goodness. Jerick McKinnon, right? Remember, he has the Chiefs offense is struggling. They started throwing him the ball a ton, and it worked for a real, it was McKinnon was not going to be that guy all the time or for a long time. And I think that this streak by Noah Gray, he's going to continue to be, he's not going to be a guy that's going to go out there and have 150 yards receiving. He's going to go out there. He's going to catch the occasional clutch 2 passes. Maybe he gets a touchdown, but I don't think that he's on an upward trajectory. I think his career with the Chiefs is going to go like this, and he's on one of these little little blips right now.
I think I agree with you. Real quick, we have another super chat from Dave. Thank you so much. He says, as a musician, I can relate, Patrick. Different, but the same. I think this is, I used to be a better game player than a practice player. Even in school, I was better at tests than homework. I mean, I think sometimes certain people just thrive when there's more pressure, when the situation matters more. It's hard to get your adrenaline pumping for those ho-hum days that don't matter as much. I think Noah Gray, throw out the 5 touchdowns. If we're asking if that will continue, I would be dumping. But I think if we're looking at, can this guy be someone who Patrick Mahomes looks at in high pressure moments that really matter down the stretch. He's got great hands. You can move him around all over the field. Really good blocker, really smart player. I think he's going to continue to be a reliable third or fourth option for Patrick Mahomes. That will show up big in pivotal moments, even if his stats don't look gaudy at the end of any given playoff game. So that's where I'm at. I think we're united on that. This next one's a little bit more tricky, and it's not left guard Joe Thuney, who might be the best guard in football. It's left tackle Joe Thuney. So he looked really good in the first half, and then he gave up, I think, 9 of his 10 pressures in the second half versus Myles Garrett. I don't know if that was an adjustment by the Browns, if Myles Garrett was pissed off about his eye. I don't know what that was, but there's a little bit of a breakdown. But granted, I think Myles Garrett, he and Micah Parsons, right, are the best edges in the league. Myles Garrett is built like a superhuman. He's a genetic freak. And so I don't want to overreact, but he's so good at guard. There's no way he can be as good as tackle. So you lose something at the guard spot, and then he has 32-inch arms, which are short for a tackle. And I think going back and watching the game, I think that lack of length shows up. There's a reason Andy Heck and Andy Reid like these guys with 34, 35, 36-inch arms. They just hold up a little bit better out there on the edge. So I'm just wondering if he's a little bit of a poor system fit, given how the Chiefs value reach. Patty, are you pumping, dumping, or holding?
I'm pumping, and I'm maybe in the minority here. I know he gave up a lot of pressures, and I saw one of our co-hosts, Price, saying he's not the answer. He gave up more pressures than Wanye has. How many times did Patrick Mahomes get sacked in that game? 0. That is Myles Garrett over there. He is a bad, bad man. Joe Thuney, like you could tell, like from a strength standpoint, and that's probably where those arms came into play, that he just kind of can't get his leverage because he can't get close enough. And so he was getting driven back. But and I went back and I watched I'm about halfway through the game looking at the film. He's not getting olayed. Like if Wanye Morris, do you think Patrick Mahomes wouldn't have got sacked in that game if Wanye Morris was out there? No friggin' way, man. It would have been a nightmare. Patrick would have gotten sacked, I think, at least 3, maybe 4 times in that game. Joe Thuney, maybe he gave up some pressures, but Patrick was also holding the ball a little bit, and guys weren't getting open. And so, but I thought he held up pretty well in that one. And I think right now he's their best option. I hope that their best option is DJ Humphries, but it's getting late early, man. Like he already was coming in, late, and he's hurt now and he's not practicing. And Sterling and I got into it on the Thursday show last week because he's a big, because I said that Wanye Morris, the drafting of Wanye Morris has been a failure so far. Well, it has. He's not good enough to start for them, and they completely blew the Kingsley Suamataia draft pick as of now. Doesn't mean these guys are going to be failures forever, but right now it's not working. And the coaching staff is telling us everything we need to know. The fact that it wasn't even a question. When DJ Humphries couldn't go, Joe Thuney was starting. They do not want Wanye Morris out there because they're worried he's going to get Patrick Mahomes killed, is what I think, right? He gets beat too fast. He's too much of a liability. Joe Thuney is a wily veteran. He may not be, a top 10 left tackle out there, but I think he could give you a Donovan Smith-like performance with a little bit of help if they're dealing with premier pass rushers, because he's got the brains and the experience. Not saying these other guys don't have brains, but they haven't had time to develop their brains. They've been pros for 5 minutes, right? And they don't have the reps. Joe Thuney does. He knows what to do. So I'm pumping. Keep him at left tackle unless you can guarantee me that DJ Humphries is. But we don't have time. Like, I would need to see DJ Humphries come out he's probably not going to play this week. So we've got 2 games to evaluate him. And if you're asking me what I feel more comfortable with going into a playoff game, and that's Joe Thuney at left tackle or DJ Humphries with like a few more snaps, give me Joe Thuney all day. And like, let's just do the best that we can.
I'm having a hard time getting to pump because I just don't think it's like in Madden. I've said this before, when you take a guy who's like a 96 at one position and you move him to a new position and suddenly he's an 83 or 84. That's a big drop off, and it may be your best configuration because the guy we're about to talk about, Mike Caliendo, I just really hope DJ Humphries comes back by the playoffs, and left tackle Joe Thuney can be a bridge. I'm with you with Wanye. He's had his chances. Kingsley Suamataia, barely old enough to buy a drink. We knew he was raw coming out. I think the book is still out on him. I think if you look at how the Chiefs were giving their tackles help, they were giving Kingsley Suamataia less help than either Juwan Taylor or Wanye Morris. They're putting him on an island more. I don't like the way that in retrospect they deployed him as the starter. I don't think he was ready for it. So this is a discussion for a later day, but we're basically to the point where it either has to be left tackle Joe Thuney or left tackle DJ Humphries. And if DJ Humphries doesn't come back, the Chiefs aren't going to trust the young guys. So next up, guard Mike Caliendo becomes hugely important because he has to step in and fill Joe Thuney's shoes without a huge drop off there inside. That's been why the line has been so effective. You have Creed and Trey and Joe working in concert. He looked really good. He looked really, really good. 0 pressures allowed against Cleveland. Team high 80.9 PFF pass blocking grade. I was impressed. Pump, dump, or hold on Mike Caliendo.
If I'm pumping Joe at left tackle, I'm pumping Caliendo at guard. I mean, it's easier to hide a less talented guy at guard. It just is. And so if you've got, the Madden rating of our tackles outside of, if Joe Thuney is going from, being a 92 to a 74 by going from guard to tackle, Wanye Morris is like a 49 and Kingsley Suamataia is like a 30. Like, they're brutal. I don't know what to say. Like, it's not my fault. They're not ready. And it could blow everything up. So, while I would rather it does us no good unless we're going to run it 40 times a game. And this is Andy Reid we're talking about, so that's never going to happen. Unless we're going to run it up the middle 40 times a game, what good does it do us to have an elite middle of the offensive line when we have to pass the ball if it's an insta sack? And you already have to worry about Juwan Taylor over there being a walking penalty. So, like, it's just, I would rather have a less great middle for a more stable across the board offensive line for Patrick. And and if that's, look, we're out of time. So, like, I'm sorry that DJ Humphries got hurt, but if he's not going to be able to, then the best thing that they could do is keep going with Joe Thuney at left tackle and let him get the reps and let Patrick get comfortable with how he blocks out there and figure out as much as they can about Joe Thuney at left tackle and what help they need to give him and what he's good at and what he struggles against, because there's no time and there's nobody else to put there. There's literally nobody else.
Yeah, I was almost to the point where I was dumping on Joe Thuney, but because this might be the best solution, I think I'm definitely pumping Caliendo, and that means I'm probably having to pump Joe Thuney as well. And here's why. So I think the drop off where it matters between Joe Thuney and Mike Caliendo and Joe Thuney and the left tackle and Kingsley and Wanye, I think it's smaller for Joe Thuney and Mike Caliendo, and here's why. When you have Joe Thuney at left tackle, he is dying a slow death. He might be giving up a lot of pressures. He might be giving up as many pressures. He is not giving up those blow-by sacks where his technique's bad, or he doesn't recognize something, or he just makes some young, dumb mistake. That's just not going to happen with Joe Thuney out there. And he hasn't played a lot of left tackle. He's going to get better. And if Mike Caliendo is going to play this well, and I think it's helpful when you play in between Joe Thuney and Creed Humphrey. That's going to help you out a lot. You're under less stress because of who you're playing alongside, and then by extension, Trey Smith. So I think the exciting thing about Mike Caliendo is this the new Nick Allegretti? You know, is this a guy that can start at guard if the Chiefs end up losing Trey Smith, which I don't want to happen? Can he kick over there and play right guard? His performance just bodes well for the future. So let's do rapid fire here on the defense and special teams. We're running a little long. No surprise with the two of us. Let's start with edge Charles Omenihu. 86.3 PFF pass rush grade in true pass sets. That was the best on the team. He had the huge strip sack, reminiscent of what he did against Lamar Jackson in the playoffs. He kind of has a penchant for that. He caused a fumble with Geno Smith in the previous playoffs when he played for Seattle. So he's really good at knocking the ball out and creating turnovers, something the Chiefs desperately need. And I think kind of the unsung part of this is he helps the rest of the starters play less snaps. Mike Dana, George Karlaftis, those guys are effort guys. Those guys are motor guys. You do not want them tired because that really, they lose their edge at that point. So you can probably guess where I'm going, but pump, dump, or hold on Omenihu.
I'm pumping so hard. Charles Omenihu I'm telling you, he is the most important Chief outside of Patrick Mahomes to the Chiefs three-peating. That's how I feel after watching him the last couple games back and watching the defense. Now I know Jameis was out there, throwing out charity balls. It is the holiday season. But listen, like Charles Omenihu, the defense looks completely different. George Karlaftis had fallen off the last few weeks, and all of a sudden George was back. To your point, like the snap count issue. But Charles Omenihu is a feared pass rusher in his own right. The Chiefs can move him inside. They can put him outside, and now they can move Chris Jones around. So it creates a problem. They can now much more carefully find their matchups throughout the course of the game that they like. Like maybe there's a guy that Omenihu is like, I could put me on the end or I can get this guy. I have his number, and Chris doesn't. And so he's got a partner in crime now, Chris Jones does, that it's going, and that the pass rush is going to not fix everything, but it's the secondary, the struggles. Teams want to get matchups on the Chiefs safeties because they can't cover. They can't. Justin Reed, Cook, they can't cover and hold up for very long. And so if they get those matchups, the Chiefs are just going to get absolutely burned. If they can get pressure, those guys don't have to hold up for as long. Those are deeper routes, right? So if you want to try to get a matchup on one of the safeties, you need time for those long routes to develop. And if you don't have it, you can't take advantage of the Chiefs' weakness. Charles Omenihu, no more important person on defense than him, because without him, I don't think the Chiefs can stop these high-powered offenses.
Absolutely. I'm pumping with you. The difference that Charles Omenihu makes is he gives the Chiefs another guy who can wreck a play fast. He's an explosive playmaker. He gets off the ball. And what I'm really excited about is late in games, they do a swap, him and Chris. Chris goes outside, and you have a tackle saying, holy shit, I've never seen somebody that big come off the edge that fast. And the guard is saying, holy shit, this guy's got 36-something inch arms and power and length that I've never had to deal with the defensive tackle. And they really catch them off guard. I really like that NASCAR package. And sometimes they'll move Karlaftis or Dana inside as well. I like the interchangeability of those four guys. Something I'm a little bit more worried about is slot corner / safety Tramari Connor. I think it's fair to say I was so high on him last season. He looked great, but he has struggled to adapt to the slot. I don't know if it's a speed thing or what have you. And he's now dealing with a concussion. Are you pumping, dumping, or holding on Shamari Connor?
I'm dumping, not in the long term, but in the short term, he just doesn't have it, man. He's a liability out there. His play is really up and down. It's not that he's been all bad all year. He's still making plays. It's still flashing what we liked about him, but this transition I think has been difficult for him, and he needs more seasoning. Not everybody, I know it's like, because the Chiefs always win, it's like, oh, it's a factory and we could just keep plugging people in, especially when it comes to the secondary, right? I mean, they have just been a secondary factory, but not everybody comes around right away. You remember, like, even L'Jarius Sneed, he was here for years and he wasn't bad, but he wasn't the L'Jarius Sneed that we saw last year. Until last year. And there were a lot of things he did well, tackling and blitzing and all that stuff. So I'm not giving up on anybody in the secondary on this team, but right now, Shamari Connor, dump.
It's got to be a dump. It's got to be dumped. This project of moving him into the slot just hasn't worked. And I'm hoping maybe they can't figure this out totally this season, but I'm hoping next season they return to a configuration where he's playing safety and Trent McDuffie is playing in the slot where he's the best. And you have everyone being in their ideal spot. A little bit more of a bright spot is rookie safety Jaden Hicks. I think he flashes every time he's on the field. And he had that pick and long return versus the Browns. That's got to be good for his confidence. That's got to show the coaching staff that this is a guy who can make plays. I know you said that Jameis was in the holiday spirits and playing full YOLO ball out there, but still big play from a player that looked great during the preseason, and his snaps have been going up. So pump, dump, or hold on Jaden Hicks.
I just want to say, Jameis, like when he is back there in the pocket in December, he doesn't see receivers out there. He sees moving Salvation Army kettles just all over the field on the defense. And it's like a game in Madden where you just got to throw it into the bucket. Big giant kettles, Salvation Army, and he's just donating. I'm gonna hold on Hicks. I feel like we probably would see more of him if, Spags, man, like veterans, he likes to feel safe. He's afraid of big mistakes. Even, I mean, you remember the whole, issue when Dan was really bad and they weren't playing Juan Thornhill. And even though Juan Thornhill wasn't like great, that we just needed some dang athleticism out there. And he was like in the doghouse or whatever because of trust issues. And that's how he feels about young guys. So, we're probably not going to see more. So just hold. And until we see more, it's going to be hard to pump him, but you've got to like what you've seen so far.
I'm holding. What I think Jaden Hicks is he's a Justin Reed replacement next year, not this year. They kind of play the same position. They're similar guys. I'm hoping that Jaden Hicks looks more athletic than Reed has this year. I think there's been a drop-off in his coverage on tight ends particularly, but I just don't think we're going to see a ton of Jaden Hicks unless they're so frustrated with Shamari Connor that they think Jaden Hicks can be sort of a spark in the secondary. I wouldn't put it past Dave Merritt, the defensive backs coach, and Steve Spagnuolo to try that. But you're right. He does, especially at the safety position. I remember Tyrann Mathieu throwing his hands up in frustration several times when Dirty Dan was just getting scorched out there. And Spags stood by his man. That's just kind of how he is. He wants those cerebral safeties to know the defense, to be leaders out there. And it seems like he's willing to sacrifice. If there's one place he's willing to sacrifice explosive plays, it's I got to have my smartest safeties on the field.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe they increase the snap count a little bit as we get in the playoffs. But again, the safeties, everybody's got weaknesses. You're not going to have 11 all pros on defense starting for you. And so you have to get the pressure. And if you get the pressure, Cook and Reed are going to be fine. In general, they're going to be fine because they're going to be able to do what they do well. And even in that last year, Dirty Dan, we saw Dirty Dan be a hero in this defense. but he was being asked to do things he couldn't do anymore adequately at the end. And the lack of a pass rush is putting too much pressure. It's not that the safeties aren't good. It's that they're getting into situations you don't want them in. Just like last week when George Karlaftis dropped into coverage on Jerry Jeudy. And I was like, oh no, it worked out. Thank God. But yeah, let's not do too much of that.
Yeah, you can't, in fairness to Justin Reed, you can't put him on Trey Tucker, a wide receiver with blazing speed out on the boundary and expect him not to get punished. So sometimes it's just situational. Lastly here, our last contestant is kicker Harrison Butker. I think this is going to be a really quick one. Recovering from surgery, shanked an easy field goal last week, but a lot of history here that bodes well and inspires confidence. Pump, dump, or hold?
I'm pumping. He's one of the best big game kickers in the history of the NFL. He's slowly making himself a Hall of Fame case. I know he missed that kick last week. It's a concern. We don't know. We know his only Achilles heel so far in his career has been injury issues. So I'm worried. So I thought about holding, but again, I don't have enough information on the stock to, at least this year, to pull my money out. So I'm just going to keep pumping it up and hope that he is healthy. And that was just kind of a freak thing. His first kickback with a rushed, the guys weren't on the field. There was a weird timeout thing. He was begging for Winchester and Ariza to get out there. So it was just bad from the start. And we got a couple games to make sure he's okay. I'm not going to panic yet.
Also, this better than anybody, but the wind in that Cleveland stadium this time of year is cuckoo, right? So I'm with you. This is not a stock you short. This is a stock that you can have confidence in for a long time. And I mean, look how long it took Justin Tucker to fall off. I think we've got 4 or 5 more peak years of Harrison Butker. I mean, fingers crossed there, but no way I'm selling this stock given how clutch he's been during all these Super Bowl runs. Yeah. Let's get into some very fast early score predictions. I'm going to start with mine. It's early in the week, so we don't even know who's going to be out there, but my standing prediction, even though the Chiefs kind of pulled away and created some distance on the scoreboard last week, I am sticking with Chiefs 24, Texans 23. The Chiefs continue to just do the bare minimum they need to do to win and eke it out. What about you, Patrick?
Yeah, and listen, don't worry, I'm good on time. Mag was supposed to be at an event. The event is not happening, so she dove into daycare for me.
All right.
Yeah, so we have a little bit of time to talk movies if we want. I'm with you. I think it's going to be another close one. Give me Chiefs 21, Texans 17. The Texans are not the team that we thought they were going to be heading into the season. There've been some struggles. They rushed the passer well. But I think ultimately the Chiefs have a ton at stake right now. CJ Stroud coming into Arrowhead for the first time. Mahomes, how injured is he? They don't know. This isn't a team that we've seen. So I think the Chiefs have a little bit of an advantage here. And I think they get some things right. And we start seeing them get playoff ready in this one. At least I hope. But it'll still be close because it's the Chiefs.
Let's go. 14-1. I mean, you can't ask for any better than 14-1. I mean, 15-0, that basically doesn't happen, but 14-1 is beautiful. I know some people are panicking and frustrated with what they see, but if anyone told you that the Chiefs would be 14-1 right now and their closest competitor would have 3 losses, you would be over the moon in September with that news from the future. So we just have to keep some perspective there. It's movie time, guys. We're calling this segment Movie Musings. On Thursday on OG Hour, it is Patty's Power Rankings. But we're basically doing the same thing. We've been taking sometimes it's 3, sometimes it's 5. We've been taking movies from a decade, movies of a certain genre, movies from certain years. Most recently, we did my birth year, which is many, many moons ago. We did Patrick's birth year, which is still a lot of moons, but not quite as many. And then we did Patrick Mahomes'. So today we're going to do Creed Humphrey's birth year. That's 1999, just an iconic year from Prince calling it out to all the Y2K hysteria that was going on. But in cinema in particular, it was like the culmination of indie film and the height of the studio system just cranking out movies and blockbusters. And there was a Star Wars movie that disappointed people. Scorsese and Spike Lee had movies that disappointed people. There was a big pro football movie that a lot of people were like, it's like half a great movie. I'm talking about Any Given Sunday. And yet it was still one of the greatest years in cinema. And we're going to mention some movies, and we're probably not even going to mention that this is the year that Austin Powers started. This is the year that The Mummy started. Just a super crazy year in film. I even have some honorable mentions just because I'm indecisive and can't pick. But we're going to each do our top 3 from 99. So I guess the guest starts. Do you have any honorable mentions that almost made the cut?
Yes. I'm not a big Kevin Smith guy, but Dogma, man. Like
Alanis Morissette, right?
Alanis Morissette. Listen, in 1999, so I was, 93. I was about 15, 16 years old when that movie came out. Yeah, that Selma Hayek scene in that movie changed me. It was something else. What a gorgeous woman. I love the movie. Affleck. You get Affleck and Matt Damon. You got Chris Rock. You've got the GOAT George Carlin in this movie, and it's just what I love about Dogma is it's just such a it's kind of unlike any movie I've ever seen. It's really out there and different, and it's philosophical, and it's not a perfect movie. It's uneven, but it is incredibly entertaining. The dialogue, of course, which you can always expect, great dialogue and crazy dialogue from him, is great. And it's just a really kind of a fascinating movie, and it's a good rewatch film, and it's very of its time as well.
I love that. I love movies that take big swings, and I think this was like the ultimate smart dumb mix where he's still doing the goofball Kevin Smith jokes and dialogue and characters, but he's kind of taking on something larger than he's ever taken on in any of the rest of his movies for the most part. I mean, I think there's Chasing Amy where he tries to analyze some deeper stuff than usual. But really unique movie. Anything else on honorable mentions for you?
No. I dug October Sky back in the day, but other than that, nothing really jumped out at me. Austin Powers, of course, is fantastic, but neither of those made my list.
Yeah, there's so many references from Austin Powers. Anytime I'm in a tight spot, like parallel parking, and I'm trying to get out, I talk about that movie. There's just so many things that it's just such a part of our pop culture lexicon, I guess.
I say it to Mag sometimes when we're in the car. I'll be like, I Austin Powered us. And she's like, what? I'm like, I've Austin Powered the car.
See, it's ubiquitous at this point. Mm-hmm. I have 3, and they're totally different from my honorable mentions. The first is All About My Mother. I think it won Best Foreign Film that year. It's Pedro Almodovar. He's one of my favorite filmmakers. If you've never heard of him, check him out. Give him a chance. His stuff is deep, but also it's beautiful to look at, and it's wildly entertaining. And he's kind of like just a zany, fearless filmmaker. The second is The Matrix, which I think might be the first film anybody thinks about when they think of this year. It's definitely in that conversation. It kind of changed things forever. And I just remember being in the theater. I was a freshman in college, and just really blew my hair back. I had never seen anything like that before. Very unique. Of course, we all love Keanu. He's a national treasure. I guess a multinational treasure, really. And then the third one is Election. This movie is hilarious. It is Matthew Broderick as a teacher overseeing the student, the election for student president. And you've got kind of Chris Klein as the dumb jock and Reese Witherspoon as sort of the annoying overachiever. And it's just like one disaster after another. Really funny movie. So those are my honorable mentions. Why don't you kick us off on the countdown with number 3?
I will do. And I'll say that, when you think of the Matrix, obviously you think of Keanu, but you also think of Lawrence Fishburne. Did you know that Lawrence Fishburne is he along with Johnny Depp was in a Nightmare on Elm Street movie. Johnny Depp was in the first one. Lawrence Fishburne was in 1987, A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors. He played an orderly, and at that time he was billed as Larry Fishburne. So
yeah, I think that's what he was billed at when he was a teenager in Apocalypse Now. I mean, he's been around for a long time, and who can forget the iconic sunglasses with there's no like earpiece on them. They just like stay on his face.
Yeah, and he always had great names in his films. So from 1975 until I'll go through his Nightmare on Elm Street name in 87. These are the roles that he played: Wilford Robinson, Street Kid; Tyrone, Mr. Clean Miller; Wilson, Cutter; Midget; Bumpy Rhodes; Swain, Voodoo, Cream, and Max. I mean, that's only to 1986. Amazing. Okay, number three for me. I got to go Office Space. I almost put it higher. Absolutely hilarious movie. Just iconic for so many. The scene where they beat up the copier, and it really captured. There are going to be people that are growing up in this era of like working from home and stuff, that like offices will still exist. People will work, but you don't understand like what it was like back then, like especially Office Space, because like even when I got out of 99, I'm still a teenager. The internet, like you guys wouldn't know what to do now if you had to go work in an office and you had a computer, but there was no internet. It wasn't connected to the internet. It wasn't key to your
job. Or was dial up,
Right. Like it was just, and that's like soul sucking. Cubicles were a terrible idea. All of that stuff. And so he really captured something and did so in such a funny and humorous way. It's a funny movie, but it's really about being true to yourself and taking the chances in life to be happy. And that's the zen that he finds at the end. It isn't being anti-establishment or, blowing things off. He finds out how to just be happy, that's all he actually wants, and that work does not equal happiness. And a great film. Fantastic. Jennifer Aniston, by the way.
Yeah. I'm not wearing enough flair today, so hopefully I won't get in trouble.
And you get the Mike Judge as her manager as well.
Yeah, great cameo. Very zen movie. I'm a huge fan. I saw a recent tweet of yours, and I had a feeling that was going to be on your list. So my number 3 is The Insider. This is a movie about 60 Minutes and a whistleblower who blew the whistle on basically the big tobacco companies. I think they called them the Seven Dwarfs or something, that the CEOs of those companies. And the reason I love it so much, I mean, it's Michael Mann. It's super well done. It's well written, well directed. But you have Russell Crowe, who's just becoming this like massive star and heavyweight actor, kind of like his generation's Brando or something like that. And I mean, literally now with how he's kind of ballooned. But you have that. But this is the death rattle of Al Pacino, one of the best actors on the planet. This year, I think he had, or in this range, he had Devil's Advocate. He had this. He had Any Given Sunday, which despite its flaws, he was great in. But I think he was the best playing a dogged reporter from 60 Minutes in The Insider. So just love the movie.
Man, Pacino's monologue in Devil's Advocate is just legendary. Peak Pacino. That's it. Like that's, you know what I mean? Like all his quirks, and it's fantastic. Number 2 for me, I'm going with The Sixth Sense. I always try to sneak in a horror film into it. The great thing about The Sixth Sense, and I know that, M. Night Shyamalan's somewhat controversial, and he kind of got pigeonholed as like the twist ending guy. The thing about The Sixth Sense is that it's not a movie about a little kid who is getting haunted. That's not what the movie's about. The movie is about Bruce Willis getting help from the little kid. And it's yes, it's a twist ending, but the reason why The Sixth Sense ending works, and a lot of his other movies that try to lean into that don't work as well, is because those movies, like The Village, for example, those movies are about the ending. The Sixth Sense is not about the ending. The ending is completely logical. It is the climax of the film and the falling action all in one, where Bruce Willis realizes that the whole movie, the kid has been saying to them, I see these people, they don't know that they're dead. And it's him coming to terms with it. It's so well done. It's so fantastic. It deserved all the hype, and everybody made it about the ending, but it's just because the movie was so well done that you went along in this journey and you thought it was one thing, but it was actually something else.
You can't have a great ending without a great movie for the most part.
Right.
I mean, maybe
Right.
it's happened a few times, but I think you hit it on the head there. It's a man who's in denial, and he needs help from this little boy to kind of come to terms with what's happened to him and move on. And he wasn't able to to see it, let alone do what needed to be done before this relationship with this little kid. Great performances all around. Toni Collette is the mom in that. She knocks it out of the park. And M. Night Shyamalan, it's kind of, I don't want to say it's sad what's happened to him, but I think he was getting comparisons to two different giants that you do not want to draw comparisons to. People were saying he's the next Spielberg, he's the next Hitchcock. That's just too lofty of expectations for anybody to live up to. And I think between that and trying to live up to the ending of The Sixth Sense, he just kind of went down the wrong road a little bit. I still like some of his work. I think the most recent thing of his I liked was Split, but and Trap is dumb, but it was entertaining, but interesting because at that time,
Signs is very good. I think Signs is very good.
And I like Unbreakable. He just had when he was doing the lady in the water and that stuff, it just was a bit of a nightmare stretch for him. Yeah. But at this time in 1999, when I walked out of that theater, I'm like, this is the next guy, right?
Yeah.
So interesting how that has gone. My number 2, another defining film of this year, Fight Club. I love David Fincher. I'm a David Fincher head. He's an amazing director. Not just this. I like Zodiac, The Game. I mean, you name it of his. We've talked about 7 before on this podcast or on the OG Hour. But this one, I think it was kind of misinterpreted by a lot of young men, probably even myself at one point. But it tackles consumerism and image and all these deep themes in a fun, provocative way that I think took us all a little bit of time to digest. But if you can get past the brutality of it, an extremely rewatchable movie.
Incredibly rewatchable, great performances. Another movie that's really a snapshot of the time in which it was made. But it's a lot of fun. It's a cool movie, right? Like I think that's why it attracts so many people. It's slick. It's slickly shot. The colors are great in the film. Cinematography, the performances. It's great. It's, again, of course, it's a twist ending type thing as well. But again, the movie holds it up. And so the journey, everything makes sense. You don't want your audience to feel like at the end of the movie, oh, I was duped. Like that they were tricked. That's not what the goal is. The goal is to tell a really good story. And hopefully they're arriving at it right at the right time. If you do your job as a screenwriter, which you are, they'll arrive right on time. Some really sharp people might pick it up early. But this is a movie that pulls that off.
This is what you want them to say. You want them to go, wow, I didn't see that coming, but now that it's happened, I should have.
Perfect.
That's
Right.
the response you want. You don't want to not plant the seeds to the point where it's just like, oh, that came out of nowhere. That's cheap. It doesn't feel authentic. This pulls it off. And you're right. None of us will ever be as cool as Springfield's own Brad Pitt in this movie. It just isn't possible. So why even try? What is your number one, Patrick?
It's the Green Mile. I'm a big reader. I'm a big horror fan, but when I did a lot of my reading in high school and stuff, I was more into classics and like Moby Dick and things like that. So I hadn't read any Stephen King yet. I hadn't read any of his short stories, and I didn't know anything about the Green Mile. This movie is absolutely tremendous. The acting in this movie, I mean, it's also like a who's who, right? Like, obviously, yeah, you're getting Tom Hanks, but Bonnie Hunt's in this movie, James Cromwell, you get prime Sam Rockwell, one of Sam Rockwell's absolute best performances. It's incredible. And of course, the late, great Michael Clark Duncan. There are a few times when I've been like truly horrified and devastated and upset in a movie. And the scene, which everybody who's seen it knows what I'm talking about, in the Green Mile, it is a rough watch, man. But the rest of the movie is generally incredibly, entertaining. And so it's a beautiful story with beautiful acting. It's got it's sci-fi drama, right? And it's just, I can't say enough about it. Michael Clark Duncan's performance in this movie is out of this world. I think it's one of the best performances I've ever seen, period.
Oh, I remember like everyone had a collective "who is that guy" moment, and he was a big thing overnight. But
yeah, you see him, right, and you're like, action star. This is an action star. That he's this enormous man, and you're expecting him to run through brick walls, and then you get the complete opposite character based on the outside perception of him. It's, oh my God, man, he's so good in it. He's so good.
And the director, Frank Darabont, had quite the run. I mean, he did Shawshank, which is a Stephen King adaptation, and he did The Mist, which I don't know if you've ever seen The Mist. It's kind of a horror movie, but they have a black and white version that the special effects look a lot better. And also he's one of the guys that got The Walking Dead started. So awesome filmmaker. My number one, this movie really kind of broke my brain in a good way and showed me what was possible with screenwriting, with movies, and that's Being John Malkovich. Not everyone's cup of tea, but I find it hilarious. I find it more funny and more and deeper with each revisit as I get older and kind of understand more about myself and the world. But just what a crazy movie to happen. Like, John Malkovich has a portal in his head where you can be him for 15 minutes and you access it by this weird room in the seventh and a half floor or whatever. Like that. Who comes up with this? But like Charlie Kaufman, the screenwriter, maybe the most inventive screenwriter who ever lived. And I'm a big fan of John Cusack. He had a crazy stretch at this time where he was doing some of my favorite movies, High Fidelity. He did Grosse Point Blank. He was on he did Con Air. I mean, just done a real heater to close out the 90s and bring in the 2000s. So, this movie, what more can you say about it? If you haven't watched it, I don't know if you're going to love it or if you're going to hate it. You will remember it.
Yeah, Catherine Keener's in this one too. I'm a big Charlie Kaufman guy. I love, Eternal Sunshine. I actually, have you ever seen his movie Schenectady, New York?
Schenectady, New York. Yeah. You know what? Of the 2010s, Roger Ebert had that as his number one movie.
Did you know that I am in that movie? Have we ever talked about this?
No way.
Yeah, I'm in it. And you can find my scene if you search for the funeral scene. Maybe Richard can find it and link it. So just a day of featured extra work that I got when I lived in New York City. And they were like, come out to this airplane hangar in Brooklyn at 5 a.m. And I was there all day. And they were shooting a funeral scene at which in the funeral scene, it rains at the end. And so I was in hair and makeup all day, and I was in the suit, and like, I was just like reading Harry Potter books all day. And they didn't shoot it until last because of the rain, because they were going to make it rain. Everything was going to get wet. So they wanted that to be the last shot of the day. So it didn't start until like we started shooting at like 1 a.m. It went until about 4 a.m. We had to take a break, but it was like Philip Seymour Hoffman, Charlie Kaufman gave me direction, which was absolutely wild. Very soft-spoken individual, but he came by and he was like, you do this, you do this, you do this. It was really cool. And it was just like this wild night where I was like there all day. And then I was, I had, they served us a meal at like 3 a.m. because they had to, because it's like union, you have to have a certain number of meals. And then we were getting paid every time they skipped one. And they did a whole on like buffet, and I was having a chicken pad thai, and Philip Seymour Hoffman came and sat down next to me and we chatted. He was really cool. It's 3 a.m. I was like, what's happening? Like, I'm in acting school, remember, at this time. So I'm like, it's Charlie Kaufman and Philip Seymour Hoffman, and I'm in a movie. It's 3 a.m. Like, what the fuck is happening? It was incredible. And then, but yeah, you could see the scene of me. It's in the funeral scene. The guy does a monologue. At the end of the monologue, it starts to rain, and I am bent over crying with my hands in my face the entire scene. And then when there's a nice little shot of me when everybody opens their umbrellas looking up to the sky. It's quick, but it's fun. And it's a fantastic movie. Like it's like, it's not going to make a lot of sense to people. But like, it is heartbreaking. And every time we watch it, I'm just reminded how absolutely incredible and breathtaking it is, and heart-wrenching it is, and sad. And if you think about life, like it's, you'll start thinking about mortality and all that stuff. Charlie Kaufman he's an auteur, man, and an absolute genius. And I'm very excited to have taken a very small part in one of his films.
I'm going to have to go back and watch that. I've only seen it one time. I've seen Adaptation and Being John Malkovich a ton, Eternal Sunshine a ton. That one just hit me so hard and was so heady that it's just been hard for me to revisit, but I know I need to. It's time. It's been well over a decade. So, and your extra story beats the hell out of mine. My best one was I was an extra for Ocean's 13, and I show up and there's just a ton of people there at this huge building. And I don't get to see George. I don't get to see Matt. I don't get to see anybody. I don't get to see Bernie Mac, any of them. So, but you get paid, and you get to hang out, and sometimes you get to see actors and directors and those kind of things. So it can be fun. And they feed you at 3 a.m.
They feed you, pad thai at 3 a.m. with Philip Seymour Hoffman. That's what the price of admission. I made golden time in that shoot, which is where you start. Once you get to 16 hours, they have to start paying you your day rate for every hour, which was great. So I made my rent. I made like 800 and some change for one day of work, which was a fun experience for me. So like, I remember getting home, they bussed us back to Brooklyn or to Manhattan. A lot of people were wet from the rain. I was not, because I was under one of the umbrellas. And I remember going home and calling Mag. We were dating at the time, being like, I made my rent. I'll tell you about it tomorrow. It was amazing. And then I took my bed sheets, like my comforter, and hung it over the window because the sun had come up, and I slept until 7 o'clock that night. But it was a cool experience.
It's actually been 15 years since that came out. So that was around the time you started at Arrowhead Addict.
Yeah.
Almost exactly, right?
Yeah.
2009?
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Well, that wraps up our 1999 best films or favorite films, we should say. If you guys like to hear us talk movies, we do this at the end of the shows. We're eventually going to do just a standalone movie podcast. I don't know when we'll do that, but we've been teasing that for a while. If you dig AA, here's how you can help our community grow. First off, subscribe to this YouTube channel. That really helps us. If you're an audio listener, you can give us a 5-star review at Spotify or Apple. And if you leave a question, Patrick and either myself or Matt Verderam will answer that question on Thursdays on the OG Hour. And lastly, be sure to check out the mothership, arrowheadaddict.com. Matt Connor and the crew over there are cranking out content nonstop. Thanks to the chat. You guys always bring it, make the show much more interactive and enjoyable. Join us next Wednesday at 5 p.m. Central here on the Arrowhead Addict channel. Until then, go Chiefs.